Hey, this is Travis. This is the last video in our DeFi series. I'm going to be talking about liquidity in DeFi 2.0. Let's get into it. So we know from previous videos that I made that liquidity is very important in DeFi. Without liquidity, you couldn't swap tokens, you couldn't borrow tokens on lending protocols, etc., etc. And the first way that these DeFi protocols thought to attract liquidity was through liquidity mining. So they would create a governance token and that they would reward their liquidity providers with a governance token, which boosted the yield on being a liquidity provider or being a user of their DeFi protocol. So this attracted a lot of liquidity into DeFi, but the problem with liquidity mining is that it only attracts liquidity for the short term. So let's say I'm a protocol, I start up a liquidity mining program, a lot of liquidity floods in, but then a competitor protocol starts their liquidity mining program. It's going to remove some of the liquidity. Some of the LP providers are going to move to this more attractive liquidity mining program. I could try to compete even more by increasing the yield or increasing the distribution of my governance token to LPs, but it's just going to continue to inflate my governance token. And so it really is hurtful for protocols to do this. Liquidity mining only attracts what is called mercenary capital. It's not loyal to any protocol, and it moves to find the best interest rate towards other liquidity mining programs. So this is an issue, and let's talk about how DeFi 2.0 is working to improve this. The first is something called OlympusDAO. And we're going to talk about a concept called protocol controlled value, or PCV. The basic idea is that these DeFi protocols are building these massive war chests or reserves or treasuries with a lot of crypto in them, and that they can control this crypto to provide liquidity where they need it, or to rent it out to other protocols who need liquidity in order for their protocol or program to function. So what happens with OlympusDAO, the main thing to understand about OlympusDAO is that it has the OHM token, which we talked about in the previous video. This is a non-pegged stablecoin. And how do users get OHM? The main way is through bonding. So they have a crypto asset, or they have an LP token like Frax OHM or DAI OHM, and they basically give this to OlympusDAO for discounted OHM in return. But OlympusDAO holds on to these LP tokens into their crypto assets for good, right? So they received OHM, but OlympusDAO now controls all of this liquidity, and their treasury just builds into this massive treasury. And they also own the LP tokens, protocol owned liquidity, POL. And this is really helpful for retaining liquidity in liquidity pools, so people can always swap in and out of the OHM token. And they can also rent this liquidity to various DEXs and earn trading fees from those DEXs. Some other protocols that are doing this are Fei protocol and Frax protocol. These are stablecoins, Fei and Frax. And they also build reserves, build a treasury, and then they can deploy these treasuries to other areas within the DeFi ecosystem to further build their treasury. Like, for example, they could put some of the treasury into lending platforms to earn yield on it, or they can put it into DEXs so that they have plenty of liquidity in their liquidity pools. So we just talked about protocol controlled value, and now let's talk about liquidity as a service. This is a way that these DeFi 2.0 protocols can actually rent liquidity to other protocols. The first example, probably the best, of liquidity as a service is TokenMac. So TokenMac have these token reactors, ETH, USDC, Frax, etc. And liquidity providers can come in and supply to these reactors. And then liquidity directors get to direct to which DEX this liquidity goes to. And, this TokenMac will eventually hold a lot of LP tokens from various DEXs like Curve and Uniswap and SushiSwap. And so they're earning trading fees, and that builds the protocol's treasury in the background. Finally, the last example we'll talk about for liquidity as a service is the use cases. Like if I'm a new protocol and I want to start trading my protocol's governance token, it's difficult to get this trading off the ground because I have to have a lot of initial capital to seed a liquidity pool for users to come in and trade using a DEX. So what Fei and Frax have done is they've partnered with something called Ondo Finance, and Ondo Finance allows these protocols to put in their governance token as one token in the liquidity pool, and then Fei or Frax stablecoins match this initial deposit of the protocol's governance token, and that creates the trading pair, and it creates a deep liquidity pool for that protocol's native token. And this is how trading can begin quickly. And in return, Fei and Frax protocol get a 5% APR on the liquidity that they match with. So it's like they're renting their stablecoin liquidity and they're getting an interest rate in return for doing so. So these are the main concepts behind DeFi 2.0. I've talked about the stablecoins and that experimentation that's been going on there, the recent failure of UST algorithmic stablecoin, but I'm sure we'll see others in the future, and then non-peg stablecoins like OlympusDAO. And then moving into the need for liquidity, for long-term, more sustainable liquidity, we get into concepts like protocol controlled value, where these protocols like OlympusDAO, Fei, and Frax protocol are building massive crypto treasuries, and they're able to allocate the crypto to different areas within DeFi to ensure deep liquidity for their token, but then also to other DeFi protocols to earn interest and continue building their treasury. And finally, there's the concept of liquidity as a service, where these protocols can rent out their massive liquidity to in various specific parts of DeFi for a fee in return. And this is all thought of to be more sustainable than liquidity mining that we saw in DeFi 1.0. So I hope you all got a lot out of this DeFi series. DeFi, again, it's one of the most mature and well-known categories within Web3. There are many other interesting Web3 product categories that are emerging right now, and I'm going to cover in later video series. But these other protocols, I think, are going to continue to build on top of all of the DeFi protocols that we've talked about in this video series. So this is a great place to start if you're trying to wrap your head around the Web3 ecosystem. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next series.